I dreamt I held you in my arms. When I awoke, dear, I was mistaken. So I hung my head and cried. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. But if you leave me to love another, I'll just dream my life away. Dream, dream, You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Good evening, mortals of all kinds, ladies, gentlemen, and other. I wish to thank you all for coming, and not for leaving, because you're not doing that just yet. Alright, now, let us begin at the beginning, as we all should, as always. I do wish to thank you all for coming here once again, that I might help you to escape from all of the things that are going on out there. But before we go any further, I wish to point out that, of course, while I do celebrate all of you every week for joining me here, we have a special celebrity with us tonight. Someone who's never been here before. But before that, I do wish to at least put another little thing in there. Tomorrow is a very special day. Tomorrow is the 16,000th wedding anniversary of Greg and Kim Benson. So I wish for all of you to wish them a very happy anniversary, because they are two of the most wonderful people in the world. You may suitably say "oh" and that kind of thing, but of course everyone should be very excited, tremendously excited, because with us, watching us tonight, is none other than Charlie Benson. I wish all of you to welcome Charlie Benson to our group this evening. in proper manner. Of course, the proper manner is to either fart, which unfortunately he would not be able to hear, so do that on your own. But the proper way to say hello to Charlie is with emojis. So fill up the chat with emojis. Go for it. And say hello to the wonderful Charlie Benson. So very happy that you can be here tonight. Hooray. Now that we've gotten that over with, we have a very special evening planned for you. I have 2 stories to tell you, both of them dealing with pretty princesses and a group of, shall we say, vertically challenged gentlemen. Different numbers in that group, and both of these are of the ancient story type. It's nothing silly. Well, not my kind of silly. These are the original tales as they were told back in the day by your human types. So that is something to look forward to. But then after that, we have a very special arrangement going on. Something very special is going to happen, and I hope you stick around for it because it's very important. All right. Having said that, I hope that everyone has made themselves comfortable. Perhaps you have a snack. Perhaps you're in your pajamas. Perhaps you've never gotten out of your pajamas. That's, of course, the way it is these days. Charlie is so happy. Well, good. He should be happy. I got to see pictures of him in the deep end of the swimming pool earlier today, and he looked quite happy at that time as well. All right. Shall we start with the story? Let's start with the story. What? Oh, I'm sorry. We have another celebrity guest. Come on. Come on. Come on. Ah. There we are. Those of you who are not aware, this is my little furry friend, Wistoff, and he loves to have all the intention in the world, don't you? Yes, he looks very excited, I know. All right. Well, let go of my beard. All right. Yes. Now where were we? Oh, yes. There's a lot of very special things that are happening these days, and you have to be very careful. You never know what's going to happen. At any rate, let us start with the first story about short people. All right. Let's see. I'm sure you've heard the story of the... sunlight. Sunshine, my only sunshine. All right. I'm sure you've heard the story of the extremely light-challenged young lady and the dwarves of 7 kinds. Well, this is similar to that. This is, well, it's called the 3 Dwarves. It's kind of like the bargain version of the 7 Dwarves. You know, it's like the... At any rate, let us begin. I hope you're all sitting comfortably, and here we go. Oh, of course, I will do all the voices as I can, as best I can, as you always like for me to do. So, we'll do our best. Someone is... Hold on. Oh boy. All right, let me get back to where I was. All right, are we there? Yes, we are. I think we are. Yes, we are. There once upon a time was a man who lost his wife, and a woman who lost her husband. And the man had a daughter, and so had the woman. The 2 girls were great friends, and they used to often play together. But one day, the woman turned to the man's daughter and said, "Go and tell your father that I will marry him, and then you shall wash in milk and drink wine. But my own daughter shall wash in water and drink it too." But the girl went straight home and told her father what the woman had said. "What am I to do?" he answered. "Marriage is either a success or it is a failure." At last, being an undecided character and not being able to make up his mind, he took off his boot, and handing it to his daughter said, "Take this boot, which has a hole in the sole, and hang it up on a nail in the hayloft, and pour water into it. If it holds water, I shall marry again, but if it doesn't, I won't." And so the girl did as she was bid. But the water drew the hole together, and the boot filled up to the very top. So she went and told her father the result. Well, he got up and went to see for himself. And when he saw that it was true and no mistake, he accepted his fate and proposed to the widow, and they were married at once. All right. On the morning after the wedding, when the two girls awoke, milk was standing for the man's daughter to wash in, and wine for her to drink. But for the woman's daughter, only water to wash in and only water to drink. On the second morning, water to wash in and water to drink was standing for the man's daughter as well. And on the third morning, water to wash in and water to drink was standing for the man's daughter. And the milk to wash in and the wine to drink for the woman's daughter. And so it continued on ever after. The woman... What? I'm busy here. Yes, I know. All right. The woman hated her stepdaughter from the bottom of her heart, and did all she could to make her life miserable. She was so jealous as she could possibly be, because the girl was so beautiful and charming, while her own daughter was both ugly and repulsive. Both. On a winter's day, there was a hard frost, and mountain and valley were covered with snow. And the woman made a dress out of paper, and calling the girl to her, she said, "There, put on this dress, and go out into the wood, and fetch me a basket of strawberries." "Heaven help us," replied the stepdaughter. "Strawberries don't grow in winter. The earth is all frozen, and the snow has covered up everything. And why send me in a paper dress? It is so cold outside that one's very breath freezes. The wind will whistle through my dress, and the brambles will tear at my body." "How dare you contradict me?" said the stepmother. "Be off with you at once, and don't show your face again until you have filled the basket with strawberries." Then she gave her a hard crust of bread, saying, "That will be enough for you for today." And she thought to herself, "The girl," yes, she was stroking her beard, "the girl will certainly perish of hunger in the cold outside, and I shan't be bothered with her any more." Well, the girl was so obedient that she put the paper dress on and set out with her little basket. There was nothing but snow, far and near, and not a green blade of grass could be seen anywhere. When she came... Yes? Where was I? I was distracted by something. Please put the tail down. There are people watching. Yes. There was nothing but snow or near, not a green blade of grass was seen anywhere. When she came to the wood, she saw a little house, and out of it peeped 3 little dwarfs. She wished them a good day, and knocked modestly at the door. They called out of the house for her to enter, and so she stepped in and sat down on a seat by the fire, wishing to warm herself and eat her breakfast. The dwarves said at once, "Oh, give me some of your food." "Gladly," she said, and breaking the crust in 2, she gave them the half. Then they asked her what she was doing in the depths of the winter in that thin dress. "Oh," she answered, "I have been sent to get a basket full of strawberries, and daren't show my face again at home until I bring them with me." When they had finished the bread that they gave. When they finished the bread, they gave her a broom and told her to sweep away the snow from the back door. As soon as she left the room to do so, the three little men consulted what they should give her as a reward for being so sweet and good, and for sharing her last crust of bread with them. The first said, "Every day she shall grow prettier." The second, "Every time she opens her mouth, a piece of gold shall fall out." And the third, "A king shall come and marry her." The girl, in the meantime, was doing as the dwarves had bidden her, and was sweeping the snow away from the back door. And what do you think she found there? Heaps of the finest ripe strawberries that showed out a dark red against the white snow. She joyfully picked enough to fill her basket, thanked the little men for their kindness, shook hands with each of them, and ran home to bring her stepmother what she had asked for. When she walked in and said, "Good evening," a piece of gold fell out of her mouth. Then she told what had happened to her in the wood, and with every word pieces of gold dropped from her mouth, so that the room was soon covered with them. She's surely more money than wit to throw all that gold about like that," said her stepsister. But in her secret heart she was jealous, and determined that she too would go into the woods and look for strawberries. But her mother refused to let her go, saying, "My dear child, it is far too cold. You might freeze to death." The girl, however, left her no peace, so she was forced at last to give in. But she insisted on her putting on a beautiful fur cloak, and gave her bread and butter and cakes to eat along the way. The girl went straight to the house in the woods, and before the three little men were looking out of the window, she took no notice of them, and without so much as a "by your leave" or "with your leave," she flounced into the room, sat herself down by the fire, and began to eat her bread and butter and cakes. "Give us some," cried the dwarves, but she answered, "No, I won't. It's hardly enough for myself, so don't catch me give you any." When she had finished eating, they said, "There's a broom for you. Go and clear our back door." "I'll see myself further," she answered rudely. "Do it yourselves. I'm not your servant." When she saw that they did not mean to give her anything, she left the house in no amiable frame of mind. Then the three men consulted what they should do to her, because she was so bad and had such an evil, covetous heart that she grudged everybody of their good fortune. The first said, "She shall grow uglier every day." The second, "Every time she speaks, a toad shall jump out of her mouth." And the third said, "She shall die a most miserable death." The girl searched for strawberries, but found none, and returned home in a very bad temper. When she opened her mouth to tell her mother what had befallen her in the wood, a toad jumped out, so that everyone was quite disgusted with her. Then the stepmother was more furious than ever, and did nothing but plot mischief against the man's daughter, who was daily growing more and more beautiful. And at last, one day, the wicked woman took a large pot, put it on the fire, and boiled some yarn in it. When it was well scalded, she hung it round the poor girl's shoulder. Giving her an axe, she bade her break a hole in the frozen river, and rinse the yarn in it. His stuffed daughter obeyed as usual, and went and broke a hole in the ice. And when the ice was in the and when she was in the act of wringing the yarn out, a magnificent carriage passed by, and the king sat inside. The carriage stood still, and the king asked her, "My child, who are you, and what in the wide world are you doing here?" "I'm only a poor girl," she answered, "and I'm wringing out my yarn in the river." Then the king was sorry for her, and when he saw how beautiful she was, he said, "Will you come away with me?" "Most gladly," she replied, for she knew how willingly she would leave her stepmother and sister, and how glad they would be to be rid of her. And so she stepped onto the carriage and drove away with the king. And when they reached his palace, the wedding was celebrated with much splendor. And so all turned out just as the three dwarfs had said. After a year, the queen gave birth to a little son, kind of like Charlie. He was adorable, just like Charlie. When her stepmother heard of her good fortune, she came to the palace with her daughter by way of paying a call, and took up her abode there. Now one day, when the king was out and nobody else could hear, the bad woman took the queen by her head, and the daughter took her by the heels, and they dragged her from her bed, and flung her out of the window into the stream which flowed beneath it. Then the stepmother lay her ugly daughter in the queen's place, and covered her up with clothes, so that nothing of her was seen. When the king came home and wished to speak to his wife, the woman called out, "Quietly, quietly, this will never do. Your wife is very ill. You must let her rest all day." Now the king suspected no evil, and didn't come home till next morning. When he spoke to his wife, and she answered him, instead of the usual piece of gold that jumped out of her mouth, came a toad. Yes. Then he asked her what it meant, and the old woman told him it was nothing but weakness, and that she would soon be all right once again. But that same evening, the scullion noticed a duck swimming in the gutter, saying as it passed, "Why does the king pray you tell? What does the king pray you tell? Is he awake, or sleeps he well?" And receiving no reply, it continued, "And all my guests, are they asleep?" And the scullion answered, "Yes, one and all they slumber deep." And the duck went on, "And what about my baby dear?" And he answered, "Oh, it sleeps soundly, never fear." And the duck assumed the queen's shape, went up to the child's room, tucked him in comfortably in his cradle, and then swam back down the gutter again, in the likeness of a duck. It was repeated for 2 nights, and on the 3rd the duck said to the scullion, "Go and tell the king to swing his sword 3 times over me on the threshold." Well, the scullion did as the creature bade him, and the king came with his sword and swung it 3 times over the bird, and lo and behold, his wife stood before him once more, alive and as blooming as ever. The king rejoiced greatly, but he kept the queen in hiding until the Sunday on which the child was to be christened. And after the christening he said, "What punishment does that person deserve who drags another out of bed and throws him or her, as the case may be, into the water?" Then the wicked old stepmother answered, "No better fate than to be put into a barrel and be rolled down the hill into the water." "You have pronounced your own doom," said the king, and he ordered a barrel, and he put the bad old woman and her daughter inside. Then the barrel was rolled down the hill until it fell into the river. The end? Yes, that is the end of the story. So, the moral of that story is, be nice to people, I suppose. All right. That was 1 story down. We have another story to go, and it has 4 more dwarves. Now, you may be familiar with this second story. If you've ever been alive, raise your hand if you've been alive. It doesn't matter, I can't see your hands. All right. Oh yes, Scott from Canada says, "Oh, I just realized that I don't do the glasses cleaning song. No, that is the sole domain of Mr. Gregory Vincent. Although I should point out that I do have a cloth specifically for cleaning my glasses, and when the song is sung, I do quite frankly clean these guys. Because, I have to make sure that I can see properly the horrid movies that he shows us, and that helps me to more precisely add these sound effects when I do. Well, and I see that Greg is off. Goodbye, Greg. Goodbye, Kim. Goodbye, Charlie. Thank you for coming. All right. Well, it's a good thing he's probably already heard this story, so at least he got one story in. That's very nice. He's such a very sweet boy. If you haven't seen him, then you've missed out. Simple as that. All right. And the boy does enjoy farts. Probably why he and I get along. All right. All right. Now, the second story, as I mentioned before, is about a UV challenged young lady and 7 diminutive persons. So let us begin with at the beginning, of course. All right. This, of course, starts with the traditional beginning words. Once upon a time. Yes, once upon a time, in the middle of winter, when the flakes of snow were falling, like feathers from the clouds, a queen sat in her palace window, which had been an ebony black frame, stitching her husband's shirts. While she was thus engaged and looking out at the snow, she pricked her finger, and 3 drops of blood fell upon the snow. Now the red looked so well upon the white that she thought to herself, "Oh, that I had a child as white as this snow, as red as this blood, and as black as the wood of this frame." And soon afterwards a little daughter came to her, who was white as snow, with cheeks as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. And from this she was named Snow White. And at the same time her mother died. About a year afterwards the king married another wife, who was very beautiful, but so proud and haughty that she could not hear anyone to be better looking than herself. And she owned a wonderful mirror, and when she stepped before it and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" it replied, "The queen is the fairest of the day." Then she was pleased, for she knew the mirror spoke truly. Little Snow White, however, grew up, and became prettier and prettier, and when she was even 7 years old, she was quite as fair as the noonday, and more beautiful than the queen herself. When the queen now asked the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" it replied, "The queen was fairest yesterday, Snow White is the fairest now, they say." The answer so angered the queen that she became quite yellow with envy. From that hour, whenever she saw Snow White, her heart was hardened against her, and she hated the little girl. Her envy and jealousy increased so that she had no rest, day or night, and she said to a huntsman, "Take the child away into the forest. I will never look at her again. You must kill her and bring her heart and tongue for token." The huntsman listened and took the maiden away, but when he drew out his knife to kill her, she began to cry, saying, "Ah, dear huntsman, give me my life. I will run into the wild forest and never come home again." Well, this speech softened the hunter's heart, and her beauty so touched him that he had only pity on her and said, "Well, run away then, poor child." And he thought to himself, "The wild beasts will soon devour her. The wild beasts will soon devour you." Still, he felt as if a stone had been lifted from his heart, because her death was not by his hand. Just at that moment, a young boar came roaring along the spot, and as soon as he cast his eyes upon it, the huntsman caught it, and killing it, took its tongue and heart, and carried them to the queen for a token of his deed. But now poor little Snow White was left motherless and alone, and overcome with grief. She was bewildered at any sight of so many trees, and knew not which way to turn. She ran until her feet refused to go any farther, and it was getting very dark. And soon she saw a little house nearby. She entered in to rest. In this cottage everything was small, but very neat and elegant. In the middle stood a little table with a white cloth over it, and 7 little plates upon it, each plate having a spoon and a knife and a fork, and there were even 7 little mugs against the wall. And against the wall there were 7 little beds arranged in a row, each covered with snow-white sheets. The little Snow White, being both hungry and thirsty, sat, ate a little morsel of the forage out of each plate, and drank a draught or 2 of wine out of each mug, for she did not wish to take away the whole share for anyone. And after that, because she was so tired, she laid herself down on one bed, but it did not suit. She tried another, but it was too long, and the 4th was too short, the 5th too hard, but the 7th was just the thing, and tucking herself up in it, she went to sleep, first saying her prayers as usual. When it became quite dark, the owners of the cottage came home, 7 dwarves, who dug for gold and silver in the mountains. They first lighted 7 little lamps, and saw at once, for they lit up the whole room, that somebody had been in, for everyone was not in the order, but everything was not in the order which they had left it. The first asked, "Who has been sitting in my chair?" The second, "Who has been eating off my plate?" The third said, "Who has been nibbling on my bread?" And the fourth, "Who has been eating in my forage?" The fifth, "Who has been meddling with my fork?" The sixth grumbled out, "He's been cutting up with my knife." The seventh said, "Who has been drinking out of my mug?" The first, looking round again, said, "Who's been lying on my bed?" He asked this and saw that the sheets were all tumbled. At these words the others came and looked on the beds and cried out too, "Some of us have been someone has been lying in all of our beds." But the 7th little man, running up and saw Snow White sleeping on it, he called to his companions, who shouted with wonder and held up their 7 lamps, so that the little light fell upon the little girl. "Oh heavens, said they, "what a beauty she is!" And they were all so much delighted that they would not awaken her, but left her to sleep. And the 7th dwarf, in whose bed she was, slept with each of his fellows for 1 hour, and so passed the night. As soon as the morning dawned, Snow White was awake, and she was quite frightened when she saw the 7 little men, but they were very friendly, and asked her what she was, who she was called. "My name is Snow White," was her reply. "Why have you come into our cottage?" they asked. When she told them how her stepmother would have had her killed, but the huntsman had spared her life, and how she had wandered about the whole day until the last she found their house. When her tale was finished, the dwarf said, "Do you look after our household, be our cook, make our beds, wash, sew, and knit for us, and keeping everything in neat order? If so, we will keep you here, and you shall want for nothing." Snow White answered, Yes, with all my heart I will." And so she remained with them, and kept their house in order. In the morning the dwarfs went into the mountains, and searched for silver and gold. And the evening they came home, and found their meals ready for them. During the day the maiden was left alone, and therefore the good dwarfs warned her and said, "Be careful of your stepmother, who soon will know of your being here, so let nobody into the cottage. Meanwhile, the queen, supposing that she had eaten the heart and tongue of her stepdaughter, believed that she was now above all the most beautiful women in the world. One day she stepped before her mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of us all?" And it replied, "The Queen was fairest yesterday. Snow White is fairest now, they say. The dwarfs protect her from thy sway, amid the forest, far away." Now this reply surprised her. But she knew that the mirror spoke the truth. She knew, therefore, that the huntsman had deceived her, and that Snow White was still alive. So she dyed her face and clothed herself as a peddler woman, so that no one could recognize her. And in this disguise she went over the 7 hills to the house of the 7 dwarfs. She knocked at the door of the hut and called out, "Fine goods for sale! Beautiful goods for sale!" Well, Snow White peeped out of the window and said, "Good day, my good woman. What have you to sell?" "Fine goods, beautiful goods," she replied. "Stays of all colours," and she held up a pair which were made of many-coloured silks. "I may let this in this ominous woman," thought Snow White, and she unbolted the door and bargained for one of the pair of stays. "You can't think, my dear, how they will become you," exclaimed the old woman. "Come, let me lace you up for them up for you." Snow White suspected nothing, and let her in to do as she wished. But the old woman laced her up so quickly and so tightly that her breath went, and she fell down at once dead. "Now," thought the old woman to herself, hastening away, "now I am once more the most beautiful of all." At eventide, not long after she had left, the 7 dwarfs came along, and were much frightened at seeing their dear little maid lying on the ground, with neither moving nor breathing, as if she were dead. They raised her up, and when they saw that she was laced in too tight, they cut the stays into pieces, and presently she began to breathe again. A little by more she revived. When the dwarves now heard what had taken place, they said, "The old peddler woman was no other than your wicked stepmother. Take more care of yourself, and let no one enter when we are not with you." Meanwhile, the Queen had reached home, and going before the mirror she repeated her usual words, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of us all?" And it replied as before, "The Queen was fairest yesterday. Snow White is fairest now, they say. The dwarves protect her in nice way, amidst the forest, far away." Well, as soon as she had finished, her blood rushed to her heart, for she was so angry to hear that Snow White was yet living. "But now," she thought to herself, "I will make something which shall destroy her completely." Thus saying, she made a poison comb by the arts which she understood, and then, disguising herself, she took the form of an old widow. And she went over the 7 hills to the house of the 7 dwarfs, and knocking at the door she called out, "Good wares to sell today." Snow White peeped out and said, "You must go farther, for I dare not let you in." "But you may still look," said the old woman, drawing her poison comb and holding it up. The sight of this pleased the maiden so that she allowed herself to be persuaded and opened the door. As soon as she bought something, the old woman said, "Now let me for once comb your hair properly." And Snow White consented, but scarcely was the comb drawn through her hair when the poison began to work, and the maiden fell down senseless. "You pattern of beauty," cried the wicked Queen, "but now it is all over with you." And so saying, she departed. Fortunately, evening came, and the 7 dwarfs returned, and as soon as they saw Snow White laying like dead upon the ground, they suspected the Queen, and discovering the poison comb, they immediately drew it out. Then the maiden very soon revived, and told them what had happened. So they again warned her against the wicked stepmother, and bade her to open the door to nobody. Meanwhile, the queen on her arrival home had again consulted the mirror and received the same answer as twice before. This made her terrible, and made her tremble and foam with rage and jealousy, and she swore that Snow White would die if it cost her her own life. Whereupon she went into an inner secret chamber, but no one could enter, I guess except her, and made an apple of the most deep and subtle poison. Outwardly, it looked nice. It looked nice enough. It had rosy cheeks, which would make the mouth of everyone who looked at it water. But whoever ate the smallest piece of it would surely die. As soon as the apple was ready, the queen again dyed her face and clothed herself like a peasant's wife, and then over the 7 mountains to the house of the 7 dwarves she made her way. She knocked at the door, and Snow White stretched out her head and said, "I dare not let anyone enter. The 7 dwarves have forbidden me." "That is hard on me," said the old woman, "for I must take back my apples. But there is one which I shall give you." "No," said Snow White. "No, I dare not take it." "What? Are you afraid of it?" cried the old woman. "Then see, I will cut the apple in halves. You to eat the red cheeks, and I will eat the core." Now the apple was so artfully made that the red cheeks alone were poisoned. Snow White very much wished for the beautiful apple, and when she saw the woman eating the core, she could no longer resist, but, stretching out her hand, she took the poison part. Scarcely had she placed a piece in her mouth, when she fell down dead upon the ground. Then the queen, looking at her with glittering eyes, and laughing bitterly, exclaimed, "White as snow, red as blood, black as ebony. This time the dwarves cannot reawaken you." And when she reached home and consulted the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of us all?" it answered, "The queen is the fairest of the day." Then her envious heart was at rest, and peacefully as an envious heart can rest. When the little dwarves returned home in the evening, they found Snow White lying on the ground, and there appeared to be no life in her body. She seemed to be quite dead. They raised her up and tried if they could, but could find nothing poisonous. They unlaced her and even uncombed her hair and washed her with water and with wine, but nothing availed. The dear child was really and truly dead. Then they laid her upon a bier, and all 7 placed themselves around it and wept for 3 days without ceasing. Then they prepared to bury her, but she looked still fresh and lifelike, and even her red cheeks had not deserted her. So they said to one another, we cannot bury her in the black ground." Then they ordered a case to be made of glass. In this they could see her body on all sides, and the dwarves wrote then her name with golden letters upon the glass, saying that she was a king's daughter. Now they placed the white case upon the ledge on a rock, and one of them always remained by it, watching. Even the birds bewailed the loss of Snow White. First came an owl, then a raven, and last of all a dove. For a long time Snow White lay peacefully in her case, and changed not, but looked as if she was only asleep, for she was still as white as snow, red as blood, and black-haired as ebony. But by and by it happened that a king's son was travelling in the forest, and came to the dwarf's house to pass the night. And soon he saw the glass upon the rock, and the beautiful maiden laying within, and he read also the golden inscription. When he had examined it, he said to the dwarfs, "Let me have this case. I will pay for it, whatever you like." But the dwarves replied, "We will not sell it for all the gold in the world." "Then give it to me," said the prince, "for I cannot live without Snow White. I will honor and protect her as long as I live." When the dwarves saw that he was too much in earnest, they pitied him, and at last gave him the case. and the prince ordered it to be carried away on the shoulders of his attendants. Presently it happened that they stumbled over a rut, and with it shook the piece of the poisoned apple which lay in Snow White's mouth, and it fell out. Very soon she opened her eyes, and raising the lid of the glass case, she rose and asked, "Where am I?" Full of joy, the prince answered, "You are safe with me." And he told her that she had suffered, and how he would rather have her than any other for his wife. And he asked her to accompany him home to the castle of the king, his father. Snow White consented, and when they arrived there, they were married with great splendor and magnificence. Meanwhile, Snow White's stepmother was also invited to the wedding. When she was all dressed in her finery to go, she stepped in front of the mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" It replied, "The queen was fairest yesterday, but the prince's bride now, they say." Well, at these words, the queen was in a fury, and was so terribly mortified that she knew not what to do with herself. But first she resolved not to go to the wedding, but she could not resist the wish to see the princess. So she went, but as soon as she saw the bride, she recognized Snow White, and was so terrified with rage and astonishment that she rushed out of the castle and was never heard of again. The end. All right, congratulations, folks. You have made it through both stories this evening. I congratulate you on that. Oh, they want the music turned down? Sorry, I didn't see that. I was busy reading. Is that better? Is that better? I hope that's better. All right. Very good. All right. Well, I'm glad we turned it down because what's coming up next is very important. Folks, here we go. All right, folks. Normally I would want to be doing something rather silly here, but there's something that we need to talk about. I have a prepared statement, so please, if you will, have a listen. Here we go. On this day, the 11th of June, on the 11th of the human month and year of June 2020, I, Ik Onwee Fu, fourth king of the Trolls, have written this prepared statement in regards to the current state of human affairs. In accordance with the laws of the three realms, as a duly appointed representative of the three realms, I state the following so as to provide mortal kind with information and perspective from outside their limited scope, as are the rights and duties of my titles as Liaison of the Three Realms, Knight of the Sidhe, Order of the Green Men, and King of the Trolls. After this prepared statement, the floor will be open to any questions that you might have. As is shown on my face, the three notches beneath my mouth have been I have been appointed as the spokesbeing for the three realms, human, nature, and the Fae. As liaison of the three realms, it is my duty to act as a voice for each of the three realms during times of negotiation and conflict, and to act as a mediator when necessary. It has only been on rare occasion that I have ever had to speak on behalf of one of the three realms to its own realm, and the only realm that has ever had this problem happen to be humans. Even those of us living under rocks at this point are fully aware of the continued goings-on with the human realm. A war is being fought for the very soul of humanity. The conflict based on what, quite frankly, is the silliest of differences. It is an old conflict, stretched thin, born of humans long dead, and perpetuated by traditions of systemic prejudice. Groups gather in mass, each side of the conflict, while an invisible enemy stalks stalks each and every one on all sides, forgotten in the midst of the fray. You have all forgotten the one thing that makes you equal. You are mortal. In regards to the prejudices humans have towards placed on one another, I offer the following quotes from the Trollish Lexicon. From the Trollish Lexicon preface. The common visual images that come to mind when thinking of good beings as well as evil ones were by and large created by mortal artists during the time when fairies, trolls, elves, and the like were all highly misunderstood and prejudiced, and therefore these images have no logical basis on which fae are good and which are evil. Wings do not denote good any more than horns denote evil, unless one sees cows as infernal. In truth, it is the actions of any given being that would tell you the nature of their demeanor rather than their appearance. Mankind would be a much better place if it were to accept this one simple truth. So it goes that the color of a human skin cannot and should not be seen as a measure of who they are. It is the creature within the outer shell that is the true self. The outermost part is merely decoration. But let's take this further. Again, from the Trollish Lexicon. Part 6, The Nature of Good and Evil, in which we shall reveal the balance of all things, and why things cannot be all happiness and sunshine. While the dream of all happiness and smiles, and merriment and laughter is a nice one, there is a reality that cannot be ignored. Without shadow, light has no value. Without cold, warmth is void of need. Without cold, warmth is void of need. So it is that while the goal of a universal peace is a divine path, it is not a balanced one, and nature is all about balance. We are all balanced on this planet, which is balanced within the planet circling the sun, which is balanced in our arm of the galaxy. To upset the balance, even for good, is to upset the nature of all things. Upset the orbit we have, for example, and the whole world gets flung out into space, or plunged into the sun, and that would be the end of us all. Now it is the nature of evil to try and disturb this balance, and that is why we are ultimately here. Not just trolls, but all of us good people, pushing forward for good and stopping the progress of the negative. Any living creature is capable of being good or evil. Each of us has both inside of us. Of course, there are some beings that are more susceptible or other extreme when it comes to good or evil, but just as there are horrible monsters out there, there are wondrous creatures. There have been goblin heroes as much as there have been elvish criminals. Mortal history is chock full of individuals who exhibit good and evil traits. You should be no stranger to the variety of kinds of people out there. No one is perfect. It is what we do with all of it that determines who we are and where we are all going. And then to quote Thomas More's Utopia. If you suffer your people to be ill-educated, and their manners to be corrupted from infancy, then punish them, therefore, those crimes to which their first education disposed them. What else is it to be concluded, sire, but that you first make thieves, and then punish them? This is a cycle that has perpetuated for far too long, and perhaps it is the nature of the shortness of your mortal lives that makes it so very difficult for you to learn the folly of your ways. Some, of course, do learn, which is one of the reasons your kind has not been smited. In more than one of my long tea-time talks with Mother Nature, we have discussed the idea of what humans could achieve if you lived longer. But for all the greatness you might achieve, there is far too great of a danger of just how much you could destroy. It is known that many of you long for immortality, and so once more I quote from the lexicon. One of the greatest misconceptions mankind has concerning the fairies is that of seeing immortality as a gift, or in any case, an advantage over the rest of the world. The truth could not be farther from this belief. Immortality does not mean that one is free from pain or from heartbreak, nor madness or depression. In fact, imagine not being able to escape from these things, ever. Immortal beings love more than just themselves. And while they have the joy of watching mortals grow as they have come to love and grow and mature, but they also have the sorrow of watching them wither and die. Time and time again, some of these wounds never heal.
Abby, come here, please, now.
And must be endured forever. You mortal stock are truly special creatures of this world. You are nature's fireworks. We watch you soar and fill the world with light and magic for such a short time. And while we watch you in wonder, we are sad to see you go. So envy us if you must, though it is folly. We envy no one, accepting who we are with all of our limitations. You have such little time, my mortal friends. Wasting it on hatred and racism upsets the balance and goes against the laws of nature. Mother Nature loves every single one of you, no matter your flaws, no matter the color of your skin or where you are from. It is a mother's love. We are all her children. Balance matters. Peace matters. Black lives matter. I urge each and every one of you to do something, anything, for your community to have a positive effect on the lives of others. Donate when and where you can, and add your voice to the many others who are speaking out for change. Clean the river of life from the debris that interrupts the natural flow of things. At this time, I open the floor to any questions that you might have. There's no need to thank me, Cricket. This is a matter of great importance. I do want to say this. I have created a piece of artwork in honor of this situation, to honor the passing of George Floyd. And I have created a Spreadshirt page where you can purchase products with this artwork on it, and all of the profits from this page will be donated directly to the NAACP Legal Defence Fund. I'm going to post the link here and now. With that, you have the ability to financially help out the cause, as well as actually wear something that says where you stand on things. You know, the thing is there are people out in the streets making their voices heard, and that is wonderful. That is needed. It needs to change. What the problem is that I know that there's also a virus going around, and you are mortal creatures. And it doubly is, it says two things to me when I see these crowds out there saying these things. It says to me how passionate everyone is about this particular cause, and that is a massively wonderful thing. But it also means you are so passionate about it that you are willing to put your lives in danger, and that says so much more. But at the same time, I truly fear for all of you. So, if you do not find anything on that page that appeals to you, please do what you can. Please do what you can. As a liaison for the three realms, I'm speaking to you about your own realm. You are all wonderful people. No matter where you're from, no matter what you look like, you are all beautiful, wonderful creatures. You could deserve better than this. Well, normally at this time I'd say, you know, where all the things are to do whatever you want as far as sending donations my way or whatever, but don't. Tonight is not about me. Go make a difference. Donate to help those who need the help. Make your voice heard. We are all in this together. We are all family. And remember more now than ever, that you are strong. Because the strong feel the pain and continue on. And you are brave. Because the brave feel the fear and continue on as well. And I truly hope that we will get through all of this together. I love you all, and good night.